Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 46th episode of the PBPolitical podcast. I'm Eshan Pokhrel.
I'm Michael Bodeker.
And today we're discussing the 2024 Democratic Presidential Primaries with special guest and returning contributor to PBPolitical, Matt Brown. So, Matt, welcome back. And just tell everybody a little
Thanks
bit.
for having me.
Of course. And just tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So I am a recent graduate of Sparkman High School here in Huntsville, Alabama. I am currently at Calhoun Community College, getting my associates out of the way, saving some money. And then I plan on transferring to the University of Alabama to major in history education, with the end goal of being a college professor.
That's pretty planned out. Good for you, actually. I think more planned out than us. But Matt's gonna be back as we do the whole ramp up to the election, which if you missed the news about that, check our last episode out, or our last 2 episodes ago out, because we had the special episode. We're excited to fully cover 2024 again with all of us and more people coming to the website and hopefully providing the most holistic, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the most thorough coverage of 2024 possible. But today we're talking about the Democratic primaries, which is much less contentious than the Republican primaries. That episode was a couple weeks ago, and that one took longer because there's so many candidates and so many different storylines, and every day there's a different storyline with them. But with the Democrats, it's been pretty loose, like pretty quiet, I'd say. There's been 3 candidates in the race: President Joe Biden, environmental lawyer and writer and member of the Kennedy family, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and author Marianne Williamson, who also ran in 2020. So, just starting off here, I mean, President Biden, I wrote a little summary, we'll go through it. President Biden and the DNC are looking to sleepwalk into the 2024 presidential election, pun intended. They've changed the primary calendar. This is actually something that we could probably talk about a little bit more. They've changed the primary calendar to benefit President Biden's electoral success. So now South Carolina is the first state on the ballot other than Iowa and New Hampshire, or other than New Hampshire and Iowa, which is actually going to bring a legal battle supposedly to the proceedings, which could be interesting to watch in the next couple months. And 2 challengers have stepped up to President Biden, obviously RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, who have been somewhat ignored by the media and have been ignored by the DNC as well. They're not hosting debates. President Biden has said he won't debate, and they're not hosting any sanctioned debates, and that's where we're at right now. So what are y'all's initial thoughts on this race so far?
You're welcome to go first.
I mean, this is a pun intended sleepwalk. This is a cakewalk for the Biden administration. I mean, you have 2 out of all the Democrats who could have possibly and should have primaried Joe Biden. The 2 probably worst options came forward to primary Biden. I mean, you have Marianne Williamson, who ran a joke of a campaign in 2020, who did not make a lot of coverage, who, as not only a candidate, but as a person, is just not very well-rounded or developed. And then you have RFK Jr., who right now, I think he says a lot of the right things. He speaks like a politician and says the right things for people, but he's got the stuff with the vaccine, the anti-vax, and things like that, which could, for him, win over some independent voters for him, but I don't really see either of them making it anywhere in the Democratic primary.
Yeah, and I think, RFK is like a weird, I feel like there's a lot of people online that, maybe this is just me being too online or something, but there's a lot of cross appeal for RFK because of the anti-vax. And he's been pushing not really the anti-vax, because I think on most policy matters, RFK Jr. is pretty progressive. And I think that's something that they've been actually trying to downplay in the primary, which is just to draw a contrast from Biden, which I find kind of odd. But yeah, let's get into a little bit about the candidates themselves. So, and I tried to do a little bit of research on these guys, but they're I don't know, these websites, especially Marianne Williamson's website, is just hard to navigate. There's no policy points on that website. It's just her kind of rambling on every issue base. So I try to keep it kind of with the economy mainly is the focus, because I think the economy is what will probably be the central focus after this is the first election fully post-COVID. I think this will be a big part of it. RFK Jr., he's 69 years old. Obviously, he's the son of former Attorney General and Senator Robert Kennedy. He very big on the anti-vax side of things in the United States, but he also is an environmental lawyer. He advocates for a lot of conservation of the environment and the climate. He wants to end forever wars, end censorship, and he has a lot of like economic incentive plans for clean energy and regenerative agriculture within, which I think is a little bit of a fresh take on like just like something that doesn't really get talked about much in most political circles, like especially regenerative agriculture. That's something kind of cool. I think that could play a big factor in the future of the country. So what do you guys just going through? I definitely missed a lot, but what are y'all's outside of the vaccination stuff? Where do you guys stand on RFK right now as a candidate?
Well, I mean, I think he's certainly interesting. I don't necessarily know. I mean, like, for example, take into account like what happened in 1980 with Jimmy Carter, and there was ultimately a primary challenge to him, and it didn't prove to be successful, even with a compelling candidate. And that's what I think will happen with this is, RFK Jr. is certainly interesting, but it takes a lot to primary a sitting president. I mean, it's never really happened before. So I don't really see that happening. He has some interesting policy points, and I've actually seen, you were right, Eshan, you mentioned earlier, a lot of cross appeal. I've seen stuff like online with like a Trump Kennedy ballot, which is like, as someone who I would feel like keeps up with this stuff a decent amount, is like kind of weird to me because they're very different on the political spectrum. But ultimately, I think he'll probably end up picking up a decent chunk of votes. I just don't think with no debates or any other, he doesn't stand much of a chance.
Yeah.
And also, like, them not doing New Hampshire or an Iowa caucus really hurts RFK, especially the New Hampshire, because that is ultimately where he would have picked up, I would say, more votes than Joe Biden.
Yeah, and let's
Kennedy,
yeah, that's true. Let's like go through that a little bit because that's something that I think they came out with the calendar in March, and it kind of flew under the radar. I saw it, but then I kind of just did not think about it. But New Hampshire apparently has it's in their state constitution that they will be the first primary in the country. Obviously, Iowa's a caucus, which is different, although caucuses are kind of confusing and I don't get them. New Hampshire is the first primary. The Republicans are keeping New Hampshire as the first primary. Like, what do you guys, I mean, obviously none of us are legal experts here, but what do y'all think is going to actually happen with the whole New Hampshire not being first? Do you think there's going to be anything major? Do you think the DNC's going to have to switch that?
It almost seems like it's uncharted. Like I don't think I would even know enough about to be able to be like, here's what happens. Where do you take that? Do you take that to like a district court, or I mean, would this go to something that like the Supreme Court would have to decide? Like, oh, New Hampshire has in the Constitution to have the first primary, and they're not. I have no idea what the process even is for that. Yeah. To be honest.
I mean, to me, it seems really it kind of seems like a state issue. If New Hampshire really wants to go up, they'll probably take it to their Supreme Court and try to deal with it that way, because it is their state constitution.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I think Kennedy's best shot would be or especially because it's so early, just in the calendar to flip. Not even if he wins, but even if he has a decent opposite, if he even gets 35-40% of the vote in New Hampshire, which is a lot, obviously, and I'm not saying he would get there, but if he did get something that high, then that could actually bring a little bit more of a conversation around the primaries moving forward. But obviously, they've picked South Carolina to be the first state, which President Biden, South Carolina really turned the Biden campaign around in 2020. He was losing. He lost Iowa. He lost New Hampshire. He lost badly, and he was fourth in New Hampshire. He lost in Nevada, and then he finally won in South Carolina. And that's something that they obviously realized and that they wanted to highlight for him moving forward. And obviously the DNC's chair is Jamie Harrison, which is kind of funny because he ran for Senate in South Carolina in 2020 or 2022 against Lindsey Graham.
He got walloped.
Yeah, he lost badly. But there was a point where people were trying to make it seem like it could be a close election, but Lindsey Graham ended up winning pretty handily. But that's just a little side bit that's a little interesting. Let's turn to Marianne Williamson a little bit here, as much as we can. She's 70 years old. So both of the challengers are actually pretty old. I thought, and we're gonna talk about this later, but I kind of expected a younger challenger to get into the race. RFK 69, RFK Jr., and Marianne Williamson 70. President Biden's obviously 80, I think 81 or 80. And yeah, so Marianne Williamson, again, I went through her website and I just it was hard. It's very discombobulated. There's issues, but it's all paragraphed and it's not really like, it's something like you have to really like read through. It's not formatted in a user friendly way. But she wants to return ethics into our economy, which she argues that Adam Smith thought was necessary to have a successful free market capitalism type approach to government or to economics. The quote, "Our government should not be run like a business; it should be run like a family," kind of really encapsulates the whole Marianne Williams, the vibe she goes for. I feel like both in 2020 and in 2024, with the whole love being the top issue. I don't know. She has a so that's like the two big things from her website. But there's also been reports, it's been a couple months now, I think, that staffers were like complaining about Marianne Williamson, yelling at them. They're complaining about them getting just berated on the campaign trail. And I think it's kind of interesting to point out just like a little bit of a contrast to her messaging moving outwardly. So what do y'all think about Marianne Williamson?
I'm going to be honest. I think she's kind of a joke. I thought she was a joke in 2020, and I think she's a joke now. She, from a policy standard, I don't think she has anything concrete that's really like, hey, this is why you should vote for me over someone like Joe Biden. Here's what I would do better than Joe Biden, you know? So I think her campaign's a joke, and I think she should really just get out of the whole politics thing in general.
Yeah, I'm on her website right now, kind of just scrolling through. So she's proposing an economic bill of rights, which is, I think, kind of a little more of a more progressive New Deal era kind of concept that never actually got passed during the New Deal, but is, I guess, it seems like a kind of system here, and I'll kind of read them out. So the 21st Century Bill of Rights pays a living wage, the right to a voice in the workplace through a union and collective bargaining, the right to universal quality health care, the right to a cost-free higher education, the right to good, affordable housing, the right to a clean environment and healthy planet, the right to a meaningful endowment of resources at birth, the right to sound banking and financial services, the right to an equitable and fair justice system, the right to cultural and civic involvement in democratic life. So the 10 Economic 21st Century Bill of Rights proposed by Marianne Williamson. And I feel like a lot of those points are probably pretty popular within the Democratic base. But I will say that, like, on this website, to find it, I had to scroll down like a quarter of the way just before there's rambling for like a quarter of the page before I even get to the Economic Bill of Rights. I feel like it's poorly marketed. I would have just put that right at the top of the page, like, here we go. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too critical.
No, I think, even like in that Bill of Rights, I think most of those, if you poll them individually, all of them will probably be over 50% popularity, regardless of party affiliation, for the most part. Maybe not the one, but the at birth resources. I don't know what that means. I think there's some of them that could have some issues polling wise. I think those are all pretty popular points. But I agree with Matt and with you, Bodeker. There's not like if this was Senator Bernie Sanders or something proposing this and like campaigning with this message, the credibility just isn't there with Marianne Williamson. And obviously, President Trump was not a politician before he became president in 2016. But I mean, I don't think she has the fire that maybe she does because she's apparently yelling at staffers, but she doesn't have the fire to, especially since there's not debates, you're not gonna really be able to showcase your like political talent. And obviously in 2020 we did not see much political talent coming out of Marianne Williamson's camp. I'm kind of miffed that they always lumped Andrew Yang in with Marianne Williamson, just like back in 2020. That was a little frustrating as a early supporter. Yeah, poor Yang. But anyways, yeah, I don't think Marianne Williamson has much to offer in this race. Those are the two candidates, and obviously we all know President Biden. He's been, weirdly, if you think about it, I guess one of the more progressive presidents since World War II, actually. I guess he's done a lot. He's had like a mixed reception on like labor union rights, especially like blocking the railroad union stuff, but also being pro union in a lot of instances. He had the student loan cancellation, which is continuing, thanks to the agreement struck in the debt ceiling deal, right? I believe it's continuing. So he's done a decent amount of stuff, and obviously he didn't even want to do the debt or the student loan thing until Bernie Sanders, I believe, pressured him into agreeing to it on the debate stage. So yeah, there's been a lot of, but Biden's been fairly progressive, I'd say, and I don't think that's really the issue. I think more people are concerned about his age, and this has been pretty. I mean, 44% of Democrats. This is right before he announced his term or his candidacy. This was back in like late April. A Reuters poll had 44% of Democrats saying that they wanted President Biden to run for his second term, and a AP and NORC poll had 47% of Democrats saying that they wanted President Biden to run for a second term. So a lot of people cite age. I don't have the exact numbers on age, but I have seen polling on age, just saying that he's too old. They don't want. A lot of people don't even want President Trump running. It's like there's like a kind of a fatigue about these two men. And do you guys think that there's gonna be any, if President Biden, and it seems like he probably will be the nominee, do you guys think that there's gonna be a credible argument coming from the Republican, whoever it is, about especially if it's a younger Republican like DeSantis or Scott or Haley or Ramaswamy or anybody but Trump, really, because everybody else is pretty young comparatively. Do you guys think there's gonna be any credible lane to attack President Biden just because of his age and his seeming shortcomings that the age has brought?
Yeah, I think I feel like if we sat down right here on this podcast and thought of like gaffes or funny moments or falls or whatever it may be, I feel like we come up with a pretty comprehensive list just between the three of us. And that even would be true. Obviously, it's a little bit further away now, but just with older people, I mean, it's not always like that, but yeah, we could probably come up with a pretty good list, and I think they could really make a good mental acuity. It just depends, and obviously, it all depends on how you market it. There were Democrats in 2020 while it was kind of effective, it still didn't stop him from winning.
Yeah,
I think it's definitely the way that you make the argument versus just the argument itself.
I remember Julian Castro saying something at the debate stage about his age and then getting backlash for it, but then, then he got torpedoed out of the race, and then it was a whole thing. Matt, what do you think?
Well, of course they're going to go after him. I mean, they have been, and I think with a lot of Democrats, it's a real issue. You've got someone who's going to be well into their 80s, who has had many viral clips of him falling. Literally, just one a few weeks ago of him falling at I think it was
Air Force
the Air Force cadet. Yeah, fell, tripped on a sandbag, and also, you look at videos of Biden speaking. I mean, you can definitely tell there is some of that latency. The age is really showing, and I think that's also because even in 2020, he was never a standout on the debate stage. I mean, he was lagging all the time. And I think the age is a really big, especially Gen Z. I know a lot of Gen Z people who don't want Biden to run because of his age, are upset because he made promises that he wasn't going to run. He said back in 2020, I'm an interim president, I'm a stepping stone for the next, and then he decided to run anyway. It's not great for him.
Yeah. And I mean, I can probably comfortably say that I don't think that an 82-year-old man should running for a second term to be president of the United States, especially in this time with the geopolitical climate and everything that is what it is. I don't think it's a smart move for the country that President Biden is running and will likely be the nominee of a major party. That being said, he's still up big in polling, and Rasmussen reports it's more of a conservative leaning pollster, but they're the latest poll in the Democratic race right now. They have President Biden leading with 67% of the votes, with Robert Kennedy Jr. 17% and Marianne Williamson with 2%. I think 67% is still kind of low obviously for an incumbent. Obviously, President Trump was reaching the high 90s, high 80s, whatever, when he was running for re-election in his own party. And he did have primary challengers, although they could probably be seen as the same amount of credibility as Kennedy and Williamson have currently. But I think President Biden still has there's definitely an avenue for, and I don't want to stick too much on polling because all the polling has been the same. There's been some where Kennedy's gotten to 25, which if you think about it, I mean, it's the same amount of polling, the same amount of votes as DeSantis is getting on the Republican side. So it's a little interesting. The media coverage on Kennedy has been lacking a little bit, I will say, despite the likelihood he's going to win is low. But there's 67%, means 33% of voters are not really, probably 40% of voters aren't really sure they want President Biden as the nominee in 2024. Do you guys think that there's an avenue for someone like Pete Buttigieg, who's obviously the Secretary of Transportation right now, or maybe even Senator Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, I don't know, someone that's ran for president, Klobuchar? Do you guys think there's an avenue for someone to come in late here? And obviously, it'd probably be a more moderate candidate like Klobuchar or Buttigieg. But do you guys think there's an avenue for someone to come in late here and win the nomination?
I guess theoretically, sure, but I don't know if it's if practically something like that will happen. I think Democrats are still I think they're pretty smart, and I think they'll recognize that Joe is still probably reasonably electable, and it also depends on the matchup that the Republicans give him. Who do they give Joe Biden as his matchup? Is it DeSantis, or is it Ramaswamy, or is it Tim Scott, or is it, if it's Trump, then you would probably feel pretty comfortable as a Democrat with Joe Biden running up against Trump. I don't really know in terms of just, primarying the president is not always, I don't know if it would be a good look. I don't know. I think the big difference between Trump and Biden with their respective primaries is that Trump's primary, his numbers he was still extremely popular within his own party, maybe not so nationally, just because he was a divisive figure. But Biden is, even if half of your own party doesn't want you to run, Trump never had to deal with that. I think most Republicans were pretty on board. So it's certainly a little unique, but I don't know if that just being unique and them not wanting him to run again will make them not vote for him. I think even it's possible that RFK and Williamson could plummet their poll numbers. I mean, it's still pretty far away, and if they are not getting any coverage and they're just kind of fading into obscurity, I could see President Biden hitting 80 or 85% again.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think if there were going to be a primary challenger that had they should have already come out. And because there were definitely Democrats that I was following that I was like, these people would be great to primary Joe Biden, but it's a little late now for that. And I definitely don't think any of the people, Eshan, you said, like Buttigieg, he's in his cabinet. He's not gonna primary his boss. Why would you do that? I could see someone like Warren, maybe, just because she's kind of she can be kind of a loose cannon sometimes. She certainly was in 2020. But I don't really see anyone at this point jumping in late to try to save the ship or anything.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think Buttigieg, I feel like if anybody would run just out of the cabinet would be Buttigieg, because I think to be able to run, especially out of your cabinet, you have to be confident you're going to win at this stage. Like you're saying, it's already June. Most candidacies are already announced. I think everyone that's going to run on the Republican side is probably in now. Pence was the last one to announce. Everyone's probably in. Or Burgum was the last to announce. Where the Burgum was at.
Shout out Doug Burgum on the Democratic primary podcast. Shout out Doug Burgum.
Shout out Doug Burgum. Again, like we said 2 weeks ago, if you ever want to come on the podcast, Governor Burgum, you're welcome to. We just don't know who you are. But we love to talk because
I don't think anyone does.
You're a billionaire, so we'd love to talk. But anyways, yeah, no, I think someone has to be really confident to primary President Biden. Honestly, I think there's an avenue for someone like Klobuchar. Biden's obviously going to want to become president again, but if it gets to a point where there's like no shot, he can actually serve as president of the United States. And Kamala Harris isn't going to win a general election. I don't care who you're. You can be against President Trump with 37 counts of obstruction of justice or whatever he has right now. That's wrong. Whatever it is, 37 counts of his documents case. And you're still probably going to beat Kamala Harris because she's just polled as one of the most unlikable politicians in D.C. right now. And it's just what it is. I think you have to be really confident. I think if they make like a handoff to like another moderate candidate like Klobuchar or Buttigieg, it's gonna probably happen like in the fall. Because I think whoever it'll be will still be like popular enough to win the nomination. Because they won't rock the boat, is what it is, on the establishment DNC side. I feel like I don't know who it would be. I think the two most likely options would be like Pete Buttigieg or Senator Klobuchar, or hey, maybe they'll just really Kamala Harris and just let her try for it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a pretty tame primary on this side for now. Maybe it'll heat up, but it's about everything. We were always going to have this one be a shorter episode. It's just 3 candidates. Not too many storylines. Obviously, it will develop. And maybe it'll develop for the better for media reasons, content-wise. But right now, this is where we're at. Democratic primaries. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Bodeker. Thank you, Matt, for coming in. We're going to be doing, like I said last week, we're exclusively covering the 2024 election now. We are 3 of the members of the many team members of PB election 2024. So I'm excited to get that started. Late July, early August, we'll be officially shifting all of PBPolitical, mostly all of PBPolitical, towards the election and covering it the best we can to hope everybody stays informed. And yeah, do you guys have anything to plug or anything going on? Yeah, no, it's not really. Yeah. It's about everything, I guess. Stay tuned, everybody. Thank you guys for listening. I'm Eshan Pokhrel.
I'm Mike Bodeker.
And I'm Matthew Brown.
And goodbye.